everyone, it's Miss Rossi. Today we're going to be drawing a city using 1-point perspective. What you'll be needing today is a white piece of paper. There should be one in your art folder labeled cityscape or 1-point perspective that you can use, but any white paper will work. You're going to need a pencil, something to trace your drawing with, so I have a Sharpie, but you can use any kind of marker or pen. And we're going to need a ruler. If you don't have a ruler at home, you can use anything that has a straight edge along the side, like a box of markers, a book. I also have a ruler you can print out and use off of my canvas page, but you'd have to cut that out and try and cut it nice and straight if you'd like to use that and get that to work. So today we're going to use 1-point perspective to create a realistic drawing of a city. Now, 1-point perspective is a way to show space on paper, so you can make things look three-dimensional or make your paper look like it has more depth than just a flat 2D surface. So using 1-point perspective, you have your vanishing point, which is going to be the point where all of your lines disappear as you're looking at it. And you're going to have your horizon line, which is the line that is going from left to right that separates the ground from the sky. And you're going to have some diagonal lines and other lines that are going to meet at the vanishing point. So we're going to start by making a horizon line so you can decide where on your paper you want the ground to meet the sky, how high up or how low down on your paper you'd like that. I'm going to put mine kind of towards the middle. So anything below this line that I'm going to draw is going to be the ground, and anything above it is going to be the sky. Now, it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. If you wanted to measure the sides and create a straight line that way, you can do that. I'm just going to eyeball it and hope that it is straight. I'm going to run my pencil along that ruler, and there is my line. So now I have the sky up at the top half and the ground down below, and this is our horizon line, the line where the sky meets the ground. And it is horizontal, which is a good way to help you think of the difference between horizontal and vertical. Horizontal sounds like horizon. It's always going to be going from left to right, as opposed to vertical, which would be going up and down. Now we're going to decide where we want our vanishing point. Our vanishing point always sits on the horizon line because everything is going to disappear where the sky meets the ground. This is something you'd see if you're standing at the end of like some train tracks. You'll watch those lines go and meet at a point where the sky meets the ground. So I'm just going to pick a spot. I usually like to go right towards the center and just put a little dot there. And this is probably going to remind you of our space drawing from last week. We had that one dot where all of our diagonal lines went, and we're doing like the same thing here. And the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my ruler again, and from my horizon line, I'm going to make my road. So I'm just going to make a big triangle that has 2 diagonal lines going from the bottom edge of my paper up to that point. I'm going to make another one on this end. So again, lining up my ruler so it is at the vanishing point, and then just making a diagonal that goes down to the edge of my page. So now this little triangle that we just made is going to be our road for our city. And even though if we're standing on the road, normally you'd look and you'd see those lines going straight and going parallel, they're meeting at our vanishing point to show more distance and to show more space. So everything is going to be disappearing around that point. It's going to be vanishing there. Now the next thing I want is a little bit of a sidewalk. So I am just going to mark off how wide I want my sidewalk to be when it is closest to me. I don't want it too big, so I think I'm going to give it that much space on both sides. And then I'm going to take my ruler again, line it up with that dash I made for my sidewalk, and back to the vanishing point. Draw a line, and now I have a nice sidewalk that is also disappearing as it's getting closer to the vanishing point. I'm going to do that same thing on this side where I'm lining up my little dash with my vanishing point and tracing along that edge with my pencil again. I also want those little yellow dashed lines in the center of my road. So I'm going to look kind of for the center of my triangle, and I am just going to draw 2 little dashes down there of how wide I want those dashed lines for the inside of my road to be. And again, I'm taking my ruler, lining it up with the vanishing point and with those dashed lines I just made, and I'm going to trace that out. All right, there we go. And I could leave that as one big solid striped line going down the road, or if I want to break it up into like a dashed line, I can do that also by just drawing some horizontal lines, again, lines going from left to right, to split up these sections of my road. And now as things are going further back, they're actually going to get closer and closer together. I can start to make smaller and smaller ones that are getting super close together until the end there. And I can just erase some of these diagonal lines that I drew to create the breaks in my line here to make that dashed line separating my road. So I'm just erasing every other box there. And it's gonna get a little tricky because here they're getting pretty small. There we go. So now I'm even creating more space with the use of size. So things that are going to be closer to the bottom edge of our paper are closer to the foreground, and they're going to be larger than things that are closer to my vanishing point, which is the furthest it can go in the background. So just like if you're looking at something in real life, if I hold my hand up close to the camera, it's going to be way bigger than if I hold it further away. So whatever is closest to this line is closest to us. It's going to be way bigger than what is closest to the vanishing point. And you can easily see that by the use of my dashes. This box that I have here for my dashed line is way bigger than those super teeny tiny ones I have all the way at the end, and that helps create that sense of space. Now that we have our road all finished, we're going to add some buildings for our city because we are making a street on a city. I'm going to start by making some buildings on the left side of my paper. You can do it on the right side if you want. You're just going to be doing the same thing, but opposite. I think it's easiest to start making my building by doing the front edge that's going to be facing me. And that edge is just going to be flat and normal. And I think it's easiest if we just trace our ruler to make that. So I'm lining up my ruler with that dash from the side of my sidewalk, and I'm going to decide how tall I want my building. So I'm imagining this whole piece of this ruler, this rectangle that's sticking up over my paper, is going to be that one side of the building that I'm seeing. And I can decide how tall I want to make it by how high up on my paper my ruler is going to go. I think I want mine, I feel like that's a pretty good height. And all I'm going to do, super easy, is just trace my ruler because it's going to give me a nice rectangle that I can use as that first side of my building to get started. I don't want my building to be see-through. Right now I can see the horizon line through it, so I'm going to erase that. There we go. And I can just fix my little corners here to make them a little bit sharper and more rectangular. And now this is the side of our building that is facing me. If I'm standing on this edge of the road, this is the one that is flat and facing me. Now the other sides of our building, because we're going to make a prism so it looks 3D, are going to be following those same lines as our road. So I want my sides of my building to be diagonal, just like the lines on my sidewalk and on my road. The way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to create a diagonal line from this top corner down to my vanishing point. So I can line that up and trace it with my pencil. The next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make another vertical line. Now when it comes to our buildings, all of our vertical lines, those lines going straight up and down, should be straight. And anything that is horizontal or going from side to side is going to have to meet at that vanishing point. So I'm going to decide now how big I want my building to be. So I'm just going to hold up my ruler and scoot it along, and however close I go to the vanishing point is how big my building is going to get. I'm going to make mine like there. So I'm just drawing a straight line going up and down from that top diagonal that I drew to the first line on my sidewalk. Now I'm going to erase that horizon line that's existing in there to get rid of that. Fix up those edges so they still connect. And I can even get rid of the rest of this diagonal. So from the point where that second vertical line I drew is meeting that diagonal, I can erase all the way down towards the vanishing point. And now I have a building. So we have the one side that is facing us, and we have that slanted side that is facing the road, and you can see it is getting smaller as it is going closer to the vanishing point because it's getting further away from us. And I can even fit a second smaller building on my street. So you're gonna have to imagine, right, as things are getting closer to the vanishing point, they're going to keep getting smaller. So even as I draw that front side of my building, it's going to be a lot smaller than the first one that I drew. It shouldn't be getting taller or anything. It should just be getting smaller and smaller and smaller. You can imagine if you want to keep that diagonal that we had there, everything else that we're drawing should fall underneath that. So I'm just going to draw another little rectangle. Instead of tracing my ruler this time, I'm just going to draw it myself. So I did a horizontal line and then doing another little vertical line coming down towards the sidewalk there. I can erase that piece of the horizon line that's existing. And from this top corner of my second rectangle that I made, I'm going to make another diagonal that connects to my vanishing point. And just like before, I'm going to make another straight line deciding how big I want my building. And that straight line is going straight up and down, connecting from that diagonal that I just drew down to the sidewalk again. I'm going to erase the rest of that diagonal line because I don't need it, and I can erase the rest of my horizon line. And now I have a second building. But here, the bottom edge of our first sidewall of our building was created by the bottom edge of our paper. I don't have that on this side, so I'm just going to draw a little line there to show the edge of my building. So now I have two buildings on the first half of my street. Now the next thing I need on my buildings is some windows. Anything we put on this flat side that is facing us is going to be normal. You're just going to draw that like a regular rectangle. You don't have to worry about anything touching your vanishing point. So I can just draw some big rectangular windows, or really whatever kind of shape you want on your building. I'm going to scatter mine. And now you could do this with your ruler and it will make them look perfect and they'll look a little bit better. But that's fine for right now. And now whatever I put on this side of my building, since this side is being affected by that vanishing point, it is going to have a diagonal top and bottom that is going to meet the vanishing point. But those vertical lines on the sides of our windows are going to be the same. Now that could sound a little confusing. So I am going to draw two regular vertical lines. And now the top and bottom of my window have to hit that vanishing point for it to look realistic and for it to match what else we got going on. So I'm going to go from this first point on the top and bottoms of those first lines to my vanishing point. And I'm stopping once I hit that second line that I drew, and then doing it again. I can erase those dots that I just drew. And now you can see my window looks like it's going back into space and it's following those same angles of my building. And you can see this edge of our window, which is closer to us, again is bigger than that edge which is further away from us. And now let's look at the difference of what drawing it with a perspective and having those lines hit our vanishing point is different than if I just drew a flat regular window like I drew on this side. If I just drew a regular old rectangle here, where my lines did not go towards my vanishing point, it looks totally flat and it looks out of place. So if your windows are starting to look like this, make sure you're lining up those top and bottom lines with your vanishing point so they'd become more diagonal. We don't want it to look like this. We want it to look like that. I can make another window down here. Again, I'm going to do that same thing where I'm drawing two straight vertical lines. And again, those tops are what's going to matter. Those tops, I'm going to make sure are lines that would hit the vanishing point, and that is going to help create the illusion of space. Oop, I can see my second vertical line I drew was definitely not in the right spot, so I can fix that. There we go. So now I have two windows on my building so far. And you're going to notice things that you're drawing underneath the horizon line are going to be curving more up towards the vanishing point because they are underneath it, and things that you're drawing above are going to be facing more down towards the vanishing point. That looks good for my first building. I'm going to add some small little windows on my second one too, doing the same thing. So this flat side that's facing us, I can just draw regular rectangles. And then on the more diagonal side that is facing the road, I'm going to make sure I connect to my vanishing point. So I lined up those tops and bottoms with my vanishing point to make a nice big window. Now we're going to add some things on the other side of our road. You can decide if you want to do more buildings on this side. Maybe you want to put one huge building, maybe you want two more buildings on this side, or you can do something else. So I'm going to show you how we can draw some trees on this side. If you'd like to add trees, maybe you want to do street lights or something else like that, that'll work too. So on this side of my paper, I think I'm going to draw some trees. And the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to decide how tall I want my first tree. I don't want it as tall as my building. So from this edge, I'm just going to draw my tree trunk coming up like that, and I'm going to draw a nice big fluffy top for my tree. Again, just like with our buildings, my trees are not going to be see-through. I don't want to see that horizon line through it, so I can just go with my eraser and erase that. And now I have my first tree on this side of my paper. Now I'm going to make a point on the top of my tree, the highest point that I have on it. And with my ruler, I am going to draw a line to my vanishing point from that top point of my tree. So I should get a nice big diagonal line. Now I want to add some more trees going down my street, and this is a guiding line to show me how big my tree can be. I don't want my next tree to be bigger than this first one, so it has to fall below that diagonal line that I just drew. So maybe I want my tree to be here. So again, I can start drawing that tree trunk, making sure it's nice and straight and tall, and then I can start drawing the top of my tree. And just like we did with our buildings, as you're drawing and things are getting closer to the vanishing point, they're going to get smaller and smaller. Again, my tree is not see-through, so I can erase that. And now you can see, again, we have our biggest shape here closest to us, and it's getting smaller as it's getting closer to the vanishing point. I think I'm gonna put one more teeny tiny little tree down here. So I'm starting by that sidewalk and giving it a nice fluffy top that is hitting the top of that diagonal line that I drew. Now that I have my trees drawn, I can erase that guiding line that I made. And now if you're drawing something else like street lights or something, you're gonna do the same thing where you're gonna draw whatever shape it is that you want first. So maybe you want a light post here first. You're gonna have that diagonal from the top of the light post going to the vanishing point, and then you can draw all the rest of your light posts so they're underneath that diagonal line, making sure that they're getting smaller and smaller as you get closer to the vanishing point to help create that sense of space and perspective. Now I want to work on the background. I think I want a nice big sunset in the background. So coming from the top of my building down to the other side, I'm just going to do a huge curve as like a nice big sun, and I'm going to draw some wavy clouds coming off of that. Maybe you want like a bridge in the background or some mountains, or maybe there's a plane or something flying in the sky over your city. It's up to you. Now that I'm finished drawing everything with my pencil, I'm going to grab my Sharpie and I'm just going to carefully trace over all of my lines. If you want to use your ruler as you're tracing to help you, make sure all of your lines are straight. That is a great idea, and that could help you out a lot as you're drawing your picture, because we want to make sure our lines stay the way that we drew them with our pencil, making sure that they either connect with our vanishing point or they are staying nice and straight and vertical. And that is what my picture looks like all traced. So I went over all of my pencil lines with my marker, and then once I was finished, I went in with my eraser and erased any of those lines that I could still see. Once you're finished tracing your picture, we're going to save it in our art folders until next week. Since we're going to finish coloring these in and finish them up next time, you do not need to submit anything on Canvas this week. Just make sure you save your project in your folder until next time. I know this can get a little tricky, so just make sure you work slowly and just keep trying your best. It's okay if it doesn't look perfect. And if you're having a lot of trouble with it and you want some help, you don't have to trace your project, and you can show it to me on our live stream next week so I can help you fix any little areas you're having trouble with. But until then, try your best, have fun, and get creative, and I'll see you next week. Bye!